Good evening. Welcome to Marty's Tying Bench. Tonight I'm once again putting together kits for this week's Vice Squad event, and since all the fish are looking up, feeding on the surface on Rocky Mountain National Park, Big Thompson, Poudre River, I figured we'd go with a good high floating dry fly for your summertime hopper dropper rig. This is a Chubby Chernobyl, and I'm tying it on a size 10 hook. It's 3x long. You want to use 140 denier thread. I've got brown here, tan would work. You could get by with black. And start your thread anywhere. We're going to tie in an undertail of sorts. And this is 8 strands of Krystal Flash. Get an extra fly out of this bundle by just tying it in at the end here. And I'm visually looking at this until it's about the same length as the straight part of the hook shank. Now I'm going to coat that hook with dubbing. Any dubbing will do. This happens to be Arizona dubbing. I like it because it's synthetic, it's got a lot of spikiness to it, and you get a little dry fly powder on this in addition to some gink on your yarn, and this thing will float forever. This is kind of a tough one to dub, but I don't worry about getting it too neat. I just want a layer of dubbing on the hook to start with. Now I'm going to move forward a little bit until I'm right over the barb of the hook. I've got some pre-cut 3mm foam. This is cut with the smallest size of the River Roads Creation foam cutters. And I'm going to set that up until kind of measuring from the front, and that tells me how far I can let it hang out over the back. A couple of easy turns. Now I'm going to pinch that foam and pull it down tight. And the 140 denier thread will keep you from cutting the foam. And the dubbing underneath will keep it from spinning. So this is a good solid pattern. Now once I've got a couple of turns in, I'm going to move back just a little bit and kind of create a platform on the inside for my yarn. Now you can use poly yarn, McFlylon. This happens to be Montana Fly Widow's Web. If you just tie it in by the tips, you'll eventually be stroking the wing and it'll come out. So I'm going to double it over. I'm going to measure it against the foam. Get a couple of turns at the front, a couple turns at the back of that platform. And then I can fold it back and tie it in so it stays swept back. Now let that yarn be loose when you tie it in. Don't worry about getting it in a tight bundle. If you do, then this turns into kind of a knuckle under here and actually makes it more difficult to tie in. Now I'm just going to leave the yarn there. I'll trim it later. Right now I'm going to tie in some SiliLegs. And I'm going to measure that against that foam as well. Now for the far legs, I'm going to measure it against the near leg. And when the thread pulls it across, it'll end up being pretty much the right length. And then the long one you trim against the third one. So now I should have 4 legs that are identical. Now we're going to fill in that little collar with some dubbing. But I'm going to get more dubbing than I need for that, and any extra I have I'll just add to the body. Okay. She turns in between until that's filled in. Then I'm just going to lift the foam. Continue to dub forward until I'm close to the eye. Now I'm going to pull that foam over. I don't need to stretch it. Spin the thread flat will help. And again, just make a couple of turns and then pinch the foam before you pull the thread tight. Now I'm going to jump back just a little bit. Create another little turtleneck there as a platform for the front yarn. Now I'm ready to trim the yarn. I'll pick this stuff up and cut it until now it looks like one. And I don't have anything to measure it against in the front, so I'll just make sure it's long enough. Again, a couple of turns at the front of the turtleneck. Work your way to the back, so when you fold your yarn back, you can tie that down. Okay. Again, some SiliLegs. And don't wrap too tight on the SiliLegs. These are actually somewhat fragile. The thread can cut them. Again, I'm going to reach across and measure against the near leg, and that'll make the leg I install on the far leg pretty close. Yeah, they're all four pretty even. Now back to the dubbing to fill in that turtleneck. Lift that head so that you can get at the eye for your whip finish. Okay, now I'm going to cut that head so that it's pretty much square. Then I'm going to come in vertically with the scissors and just cut those corners off. And now it's rounded. So there you have it, a Chubby Chernobyl. Get some gink on this yarn and it will float all day and support a pretty good sized dropper. Chubby Chernobyl.